Barbour has been a long-term friend of ICISF, certainly loyal to the models. He has been teaching this. He's a approved instructor for ICISF. He's worked with Defense Forces Ireland for many years. He's had deployments to wonderful places like Darfur. Like none of us would ever want to go, but Ollie went there. And Ollie has saved lives, he has saved careers, he has saved marriages throughout the Irish forces. He is somebody who we can rely on absolutely. He is an honorable man who has done so much, and he has influenced so many others, even outside of Defense Forces Ireland. And I'd like you to welcome him to the stage, and along with him will be Peter. Is it Twomey? Okay, got it right. They didn't put that on here, but I remember looking at your badge. And Peter is an officer in command of the Personnel Support Management Section, Naval Services in the Irish Defense Forces. And his strength is in his abiding passion for critical incident stress management, in which he has advanced training. He is also an experienced trainer, having held many senior appointments in the Naval Service. He has a unique combination of high level of competencies, skill sets, qualifications, experiences with both training and practice environments. And I would like you to welcome these two outstanding presenters who are truly honorable people who have spent a great deal of their life building these programs to support their people.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good to go. Welcome this afternoon. On behalf of ourselves, I'd like to offer you a Céad Míle Fáilte. It's unusual to be in another person's country and welcome them, but Céad Míle Fáilte to us all here today. I want to say a special thanks to a small group last night that tried to rectify the Ivory Coast flag and repair it and turn it into the Irish flag. And can I say they were up late last night? They manufactured somewhere in this building, they found an Irish guy who happened to be on the desk, who got them a ladder, and in fairness to them, the Irish flag is flying today from that aspect of it. The lights are too bright, so I can't find you. Thank you very, very much. We were talking about respect then for flags. Respect as well, we're talking about here, we're talking about the tragic circumstances in the Mediterranean. We're both military officers, naval officer and a military officer. I'm retired, or they retired me recently from that aspect of it. But we're not looking at the political situation. What we're looking at is the crisis management situation for the crews that served on board those ships in the Mediterranean. It's a 4-year mission that we started with. So what I'm going to look at it for a few minutes is just to talk a few seconds on the Irish Defence Forces. Peter will take us through the operation in the Mediterranean and the two different missions that were there. The two different missions were decided by Europe, not by the Irish government. We fulfilled that role for them. And then I'm going to look at the Naval Service and the Personnel Support Services, where I will look at what they did pre-deployment, during the deployment, and then what we do on return to Ireland from that aspect of it. And then we'll look at a few lessons learned. There will be a short video of about 2 minutes, which is one of the scenes, but there's nothing in it from that aspect of it. It will go for about 2 minutes, and it will be just two naval personnel talking about their experience. You will see a small bit of the sea where they're retrieving. In that specific incident, on that specific day, 727 souls were taken from the boat, all survived. So I'm going to hand you, I'm going to talk first about the Army. We have a thing in the Defence Forces as to whether we're an Army, a Defence Forces. The other two corps don't like us when we say the Army, because they will say the Defence Forces and the Naval Service. So we're divided into three, like most militaries, with the Army, the Air Corps and the Navy. And while we're three separates, we work under the one Defence Forces headquarters from that aspect of it. We have CISM teams developed in each of the areas, just like what the previous speaker was saying earlier on this morning. It's like with like. So we have naval CISM teams, we have Air Corps CISM teams, and then we have Army teams from that aspect of it. My former job was Director of Personnel Support Services, which was invested the power of the whole area of CISM. And from that point of view, Peter is the actual CISM Director in the Naval Service from that aspect of it. And we have two other gentlemen here with us as well from the CISM teams in the Defence Forces. They're giving a very good lecture later on, I believe, on IRAP from that aspect of it. So the Navy support, when we started looking at the deployment of the ships to the Mediterranean, because it was new for the Defence Forces from a naval point of view, but we were very used to it from a Defence Forces point of view, because we're one of the longest serving countries providing troops to the United Nations throughout the world. We started in Lebanon in 1959 and have been very successful in continuous service to the United Nations ever since that. So when we started looking at why the need for peers, all serving personnel we felt had the potential to be actually damaged by the mission that they were going to participate in the Mediterranean. And we know ourselves that post-traumatic stress can lead to loss of crews. And when you talk about the crews in the Mediterranean, it was a ship that contained 82. The ship's crew were bolstered with medical personnel purely for the sake of the refugees, that we would have medical support on board. There was no spare bunks. You were part of the crew. There was no room to travel on that aspect of it. When the CISM team came out for their trip home, they brought sleeping bags with them and they shared from that, but I never really went into what they shared. And we know if untreated, every critical incident can actually contribute to the risk of post-traumatic stress disorder. And we know in the Defence Forces, we have people that have suffered and are suffering with PTSD from that aspect of it. So the Navy, it emerged in part because of the needs of the serving personnel were not being adequately met within the services. And I'll talk about that again in a few minutes when we look at what we were doing. Navy Peer Support argued that no one knew more about their needs than they did themselves. And that was a key aspect of it. You could have military people like myself wearing the normal military uniform, but when we mix with the Naval Service, we have the same lingo, but it's not really. They have a funny name for going to the toilet. They call it the heads. And the funny language like stand easy, which to you and I is coffee. So you need another language. So it was much better having them talk to themselves from that aspect of it. So the whole area of the maritime area, I'm going to hand over now to Peter.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ollie. I always find it strange as a naval officer that an army officer talks about the military and the Navy. You know, just there's something very, very strange about that. I'm a sailor. I'm in the Navy 38 years. I've had the privilege of command on two of our ships. I'm currently